The first two of the basic quality tools we're going to look at are cause and effect diagrams and Pareto diagrams. Now, cause and effect diagrams are also known as fishbone diagrams or Ishikawa diagrams, depending on the terminology that your particular organization might use. These are useful in helping to trace problems back to their root causes by asking why for a series of times. So we begin with a problem, and we ask why that's a problem. And then we ask why a second time based on whatever our answer might have been, and so on. Let's take a closer look at how this looks in action. When we start with an Ishikawa diagram, we see that we have the problem placed over to the right-hand side. From here, we have different cause categories that are placed throughout each of these different arrays. Now, this is why we refer to this sometimes as a fishbone diagram, because it looks like the skeleton of a fish, where we have each of these major kind of offshoots that have several other smaller bones or smaller subcategories within. And sure enough, that's what we see here as well. There are a variety of primary causes that can shoot off from each different cause category, and then each of these can furthermore have secondary causes. You could have horizontal lines once again jutting off from these that would represent tertiary causes, although fishbone diagrams that get this complex are typically fairly rare. So let's put this into action with an actual example. Here, let's say that our problem is that we're facing a schedule delay. We're simply running behind schedule with our project work, and we would like to identify why. Well, there are a variety of different factors that could come into play. We could have issues with our processes, with our people, with the equipment that we're using, perhaps with our materials, or the external environment, or it could be on us as managers. Within each of these, we see additional potential answers. When it comes to people, perhaps we haven't trained our people correctly. When it comes to our processes, perhaps our workflows are inefficient. Our equipment might be inferior. We might be working with improper materials. When it comes to the external environment, perhaps we're waiting on more information from a client before we can proceed, or perhaps they need to approve some of the results before we can continue into the next project phase. Just the same, it could be on management internally. Perhaps we haven't issued the approvals that we need to internally in order to continue project work. Now, within a few of these, we might see some secondary causes as well. If we think that it might be an inefficient workflow that's causing us to be behind schedule, then maybe our steps aren't optimized. Maybe we're simply taking too many steps on a process, and we could trim these down in order to make things more efficient. Or we could have duplicative work. Perhaps we've been using different code to accomplish the same task several times in the case of a software application we might be developing. When it comes to materials, perhaps we see that they're of poor quality, or that they're the wrong materials entirely, either of which could also contribute to a delay. Fishbone or Ishikawa diagrams like this can be very helpful in tracking down the specific causes, getting past the more generic answers that people might originally give when asking them why a problem might have arisen. Instead, you can continue to dig down further to find not just the surface issue, but what's truly causing any delays or other problems within your project.